Hey y'all, happy Tuesday. So we are going to give people a few minutes to come into the room, and tonight is going to be an audio night. So we're going to talk about a couple of things that's been going on while people are slowly coming into the room. Hey King BJ, hey Bruce the Boss Resurrected. Y'all, first of all, this past weekend I was in Orlando, Florida for the YAL, um, the Young Americans for Liberty Revolution 2021. I was there speaking on the Second Amendment panel with Brandon Herrera and Mr. Guns and Gear. These are two people that are like super experienced just with firearms in general and in the firearm industry, and being able to sit on that panel was quite an experience and a good one. And from my perspective as a fairly new, well, it depends on who I'm talking to, right? Because like guys like that's been, dealing with firearms since their like childhood years compared to me. I still consider myself, fairly new, but somebody that's just come to learn a lot more recently about gun ownership and Second Amendment, and being able to share that message with people, and also, talking about how we can spread the message and advance it. And particularly for people like me, and I'll tell this story just like I did at that conference. I would never had considered myself anti-gun. I don't think I was ever anti-gun. I just never had anybody talk about gun ownership in a way to me that was relevant or beneficial to my life, you know? And so dismantling some of those talking points that usually comes with gun ownership, and then, also uh, you know, a certain level of representation, right? As it relates to my demographic. For example, even as I was walking through, the airport getting ready for my returning flight, it was a young Black woman. She stopped me and she was like, you were able to fly with your gun? Did you have to have a license to do that? She was like, I just never knew. I just never knew I could fly with my gun. And it's those type of conversations that, I just find so interesting, and actually kind of relieve I find interesting, and kind of makes me like hopeful too, because to have so many people reaching out to me, learning things or being more open just because of the way uh, um, that I'm able to share the message, I think means a lot. So that opportunity in Orlando this weekend was a good one. I enjoyed myself. I got a chance to network and meet people and talk to people, and a lot of people, just asking me questions and stuff like that. So it was a good time, and hopefully, I'll get to do more of that. I also told you guys I will be at the Solutionary Summit that will be in Miami next month. That's going to be in September, that first weekend in September. So I'm looking forward to that as well. That one, I don't think I'm going to be dealing with the Second Amendment. I think it's more going to be more on the political and social side. So I'm looking forward to that too. Hey, Rhaegar Targaryen. Hey, Muhammad. All right, so also, let me go ahead and thank my patrons. Thank you to everybody who is supporting my content. Thank you to my VIP patrons, Ray and Daniel. Thank you guys so much. And all of those links for merch, Patreon, all that is available below. All right, so first of all, y'all, I have to mention Andrew Cuomo. resigning as of today. Everybody is talking about this, even to the point in a segment of him saying something similar to the fact of, I'm not, I, I forgot what words he used. I'm not something, he was kind of blaming it on his Italianness, right? And his just friendliness and his this and his that. And I'm just thinking, like, I'm actually surprised that he's resigning, to be perfectly honest. Um, I don't know what's next. It kind of has me on the edge of my seat. Like, what's next? What's gonna happen next, in New York? This also makes me wonder what type of role AOC is going to play moving forward in New York as well. But I'm wondering, I know that they came to find that the allegations were true, uh, in most part, that he was, having this sexual misconduct with these women. And so it looks like he won't be held responsible for those deaths that we know went on in New York during COVID, when he specifically sent people to nursing homes. And I talked about that on my channel super early. Some of these things that we knew early on, right? Um, COVID, obese people and the elderly were way more susceptible to COVID. And so for him to, purposely send elderly people with COVID to be with other elderly people was just a huge misstep on his part. And I don't even know, I don't know if I can go as far as calling it malicious. I don't know enough about it to say that it was that, but I think it's definitely warrants a proper, a very proper investigation. And I just don't think that happened, and I don't see that would happen. And I find that super, super interesting. But I even remember it was so crazy to me, and I was railing against this, how they were making this man a hero on TV every single day. They were just making such a hero out of him, and a whole time, not only was New York, I mean, pretty much like in shambles, not only economically, but what was going on with COVID, and what he directly had a hand in making some of these decisions. But even if y'all remember early on, him being very key in getting on TV every day and talking about these ventilators. And so the ventilators, and to even find out that these ventilators were in fact killing people. And I still don't think anybody will be held accountable for that. Some of these doctors that were just throwing people on ventilators um so quickly, right? So he's out of New York. We'll see what happens next. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see, cuz we're at a very sensitive time, and whoever they get in there, it really can be a big deal. So we'll see. But anyway, y'all, so I had to talk about this at least briefly, that nobody, I haven't seen a lot of people talking about. So if you didn't know, the Senate recently passed a $1 trillion quote unquote infrastructure bill. Okay, now y'all know that a lot of times they hide a lot of foolishness in these bills. A lot of times this money is not accounted for. A lot of times when the cities do stuff, they heavily overcharge, over and underdo, depending on what they're doing and who you're asking, what they're supposed to be doing. Um, Even most times being way more expensive and expansive than you could probably just pay private contractors a lot of times to do it when you work with these city contracts and stuff like that. Um, so even beyond just the infrastructure bill in the middle of I mean, economic crisis, I would say, when you have gas prices rising, when you have grocery prices rising, when you still have a large percentage of your country out of work, when you have the Dow falling and things like this, and adding that infrastructure bill at a time like this without allowing the economy to recover. I, I just, we're gonna see we're gonna see what happens, but I think it's already gonna be a burden on the middle class. I think you're gonna see a lot more people over this next year going from, middle class to poor. In some states, they're still trying to continue to promote and extend the moratoriums. You can only do that for so long, and I don't know if, well, I would think they do, but this is money that still like has to be paid back eventually, right? So all of this has to come to a head at some point. That's just what it comes down to. This stuff has to come to a head at some point. But while all of this is already going on right here in America, where you have homelessness rising, okay, you have struggling, veterans struggling, you have so many students that are going to be behind. It's a recent story that just talked about how you have a lot of these students that are like a year behind in their work, and it's going to damage the public school so much because everybody's going to have to play catch up, right? And so as all of these things are happening, okay, on top of your $1 trillion infrastructure bill, there's a new bill that's about to come out. And then, of course, we have to give $10 million to improve gender equity among workers in Mexico. In Mexico. This is according to breaking911.com. Washington, D.C., the U.S. Department of Labor today announced its intent to award up to $10 million in grant funding to improve gender equity in the Mexican workplace. Administered by the Bureau of International Labor Affairs, this funding opportunity will finance a project that supports actions to increase the number of women in union leadership, strengthen protections, reduce workplace discrimination and harassment, and increase wages for women. The project will take a worker-centered approach and engage a range of stakeholders to advance gender equity. The project also seeks to increase women's participation in collective bargaining and empower worker organizations to undertake sustained action to promote gender equity in the workplace. Now, uh the funny part about this, and as we've talked about this, even before, we've always known that the government has had a huge hand, right, in funding, promoting, propagating the feminist movement right here in America, due to the exact reason of wanting to explode the worker force and increase tax revenue. And not only that, once you put more of your women into the workforce, what does that do? That leaves more children in the hand of the state, in the hand of the system, leaving these kids, 8 hours a day with teachers, right? With the principals, the coaches, whatever the case may be. Well, now we're starting to see how a lot of this is a revolving door and almost to some extent a perpetual crisis that people are starting to find themselves in, because when you expand the workforce, also with the price of living and everything increasing, you almost make it impossible and sometimes actually harder for mothers, especially when you have the government, playing a role in this. And this is what they'll often do, right? Like they'll packages this, oh, we're gonna help people, we're gonna help the women, we're gonna make the world a better place, a more equitable place. And I mean, look at the American workforce now, right? And even especially after things like the Me Too movement almost exacerbating issues where you have some people not even wanting to work with the opposite sex, maybe even questioning, hiring people. Um and things like that. Then you have to turn around and account for this exploding workforce. And now on the back end, now we have to uh uh give mothers we have to uh what basically what they're trying to do now with like the expanding the pre-K and things like this. And so with the track record that the US government already has, and us knowing that a lot of these things and a lot of the issues that we see and a lot of the issues that they tell us, hey, we're fixing this because we care about you and we want you to be safe and we want you to be good. They, in fact, created the problem in the first place. In the very first place. And I also think this is just something that I was thinking about earlier. It's actually kind of funny when people talk about like the gender equity, gender equality in Mexico and things like this, and these recent stories about how you would have, progressives here in the United States talking about how, oh, gender language gender language is like racist. You know what I mean? Don't use gender language. It's oppressive. And we need to make language more inclusive and stuff like this. And you have so many people that are actually Hispanic that just think that's the most ridiculous, insulting, just far out thing that they've ever heard, to even suggest almost insulting to the language, right? Because even when you think about Spanish, it's a very, very, very gendered, male and female specific language. And so for the United States, while we're going through our own little whatever we got going on now, even trying to be the arbiter of this, I just find so funny. And we're gonna also talk about that tonight. This new